From London. It's time for analysis now. Few states currently permit euthanasia, but the number is growing, and a recent legal ruling here in the UK will force the government here to clarify whether it's ever permissible to help someone commit suicide. Vincent Dowd asks if attitudes to euthanasia are changing.
Euthanasia, voluntary euthanasia, assisted suicide, mercy killing. There's no real agreement even on the term for helping people die who want to die. 4 European nations allow it: the Netherlands, Switzerland, Belgium and, as of last year, Luxembourg. In other countries, helping someone end their life remains unlawful, but there's some evidence public opinion is shifting in favour of what proponents often now call assisted dying. Elizabeth MacDonald is a cancer specialist in the UK who's co-written a book on the topic. She says the procedure can be justified if the patient is terminally ill.
We're looking here at assisted dying for patients who are in intolerable suffering. How much better for them to be able to die in comfort with the dignity of their own choice, rather than being forced to continue with this long torture which they would otherwise have to endure.
3 US states also allow euthanasia. Oregon was the first in 1998. Around 400 people there have now taken advantage of the law. Then last year, Oregon was joined by neighbouring Washington state and, subject to an appeal, by Montana. The decision to end a life depends in most cases on the patient being terminally ill. But William Saunders of the lobby group Americans United for Life says terminal illness can prove far more complex a concept than people suppose.
It has packed into it assumptions that I think we should just mention. One is that there's some way to decide whether some lives are worth living or not. Usually, doctors have to make a judgment whether or not this particular person who's seeking assisted suicide qualifies in that category of terminally ill, so whether their life is worth living. What does terminal illness mean?
11 years ago, when Oregon passed its Death with Dignity Act, opponents said it would lead to the poor and vulnerable being victimised. They'd be less likely to have the financial means to carry on if their health declined. Or what about grown-up, legacy-hungry kids encouraging their parents into the grave? David Levin of the group Compassion and Choices says none of these fears proved justified.
Almost all the people that have died using the Death with Dignity Act have had health insurance. Most of them are college educated, and so there is no evidence whatsoever of coercion. And there was a study done just last year which concluded there are no vulnerable populations at risk. The poor, or people of color, or people with disabilities, or people who are uneducated.
7 years ago, the Netherlands passed laws regulating a then identifiable trend towards euthanasia. In 2007, there were 2,300 cases. Professor Arie Kruseman, head of the Dutch Medical Association, says the system works well.
The core of the discussion in our country is that it is the consequence of a long-standing relation between a patient and his doctor. It may be that in the course of the treatment a situation occurs when you have the feeling that there is no hope on cure and you are convinced that it's an unbearable situation, but not on the first consultation.
And it's common that a patient's first request for assistance in dying will go no further. If it does, in Holland, a second doctor has then to be brought into the equation. Professor Kruseman says the many safeguards mean doctors and the public generally approve of assisted dying in strictly defined circumstances.
Yeah, there's a large support in the population. The population is happy with this. They have the confidence that even in the end of their life, they have professional support, and that support will be taken seriously. These people are very happy with that. There is wide support by the population. So we are very happy with this policy.
In the UK, the issue of assisted suicide is currently once more under the microscope. The Church of England has restated its opposition to any change in the law, saying the protection of life must always come before any other consideration. Those in pain, the Church says, need compassion, palliative care and good hospices, not the right to die prematurely. And William Saunders of Americans United for Life also fears voluntary euthanasia can be a way for society to rid itself of those it should feel a moral obligation to help.
It shifts the way society looks at this problem as if the right solution for suffering is termination of life, whereas in fact I think the right solution is better care for the person who's suffering. Studies have shown that if you use palliative care, you can relieve almost all the suffering.
Though David Levin insists that in Oregon, now with 11 years' experience of legalised assisted dying, palliative care and the provision of hospices haven't been sidelined, they've actually improved.
About 90% of those who use the life-ending medicines have been in hospice in Oregon. And when you have a law like we have in Oregon and Washington, we refer all of our patients to hospice, and we want to make sure that they are getting the best palliative care possible, because obviously we don't want to see people feeling that they need to end their lives by taking these medicines, but as a last resort, we will of course support them and counsel them on this issue.
In places where euthanasia is legal, there's often a residence requirement to stop people travelling from places where it's illegal. Not so with Zurich, where the Dignitas organisation is based. Since 1998, it's helped more than 800 people die. Mainly Germans, though it's thought around 100 Britons have also died there. A legal ruling is about to force the authorities in England and Wales to make clear if they intend prosecuting UK citizens who help their relatives die abroad. Elizabeth MacDonald says if the answer's no, then to prosecute someone for doing the same at home in Britain will become very difficult.
Wherein lies the difference between helping them to go abroad for an assisted death rather than having the opportunity of staying home within their comfortable home environment with all their normal support? I think it's going to be quite difficult to differentiate in legal terms this enforced travel abroad when compassion will drive the argument that the individual ought to be able to carry this out at home.
One reason all this is coming to the fore now may be demographic change. In the West, far more people are living into their 80s and beyond. In Britain, the Catholic Church recently warned of the subtle danger of the old and vulnerable being made to feel they're unwanted or a burden to others. And in America, William Saunders warns against those who claim any change would only ever involve a tiny number of very ill people.
I don't think it can be limited to a handful of people. And I think even if it could, it would be bad because it would start to orient the medical profession and society generally into deciding that certain lives are just not worth it.
When it's asked, the public seems increasingly of the opinion assisted dying should be legal in some cases. To many, it seems only merciful. Yet it's not the public which would have to decide how we as a society can be certain there's been no coercion, or that the person involved is still mentally capable of making a decision, or that the desire to die didn't come in a fleeting moment of depression. For the legislators, the doctors, the churches, the experts in law, these may yet be challenges as tough as any they have faced.
Today's analysis was written and presented by Vincent Dowd. In tomorrow's edition, Lucy